So hi.
Oh,
Hi.
howdy howdy.
I'm here with Shay and Jacob, and we're a part of the StarDust Knights. I plan on,
Yes.
yep, I plan on doing some streaming and recording for Shadowbringers, but I also wanted to ask you guys now, what are your initial thoughts of Shadowbringers when it first was announced?
Just instant hype.
Yeah,
I like new games. Well, new stuff to games. How do I explain this so early in the morning? It's cool. There you go.
it's very cool. What about you, Jacob?
Well, if I could stop yawning. So
It's
early.
okay.
I'm definitely excited for Shadowbringers. I guess my expectations are the same as StormBlood, just excited for new content, new things coming out, new jobs. Excited for Gunbreaker. Finally gonna get into the whole tanking party. So I'm just hoping that it goes well.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know when the next expansion was gonna come. I didn't know it was like a scheduled kind of thing, like, oh, every 3 years we try to get an expansion out. I'm like, when is not Shadowbringers, but Stormblood gonna end? And then finally they announced Shadowbringers. I was like, wait, they do more? Because
3 years.
yeah, this is just my first MMO, and I didn't come at the beginning of Stormblood. It was more towards the end, like halfway point towards the end. So this is going to be my first expansion drop, and I'm pretty excited.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Always.
before obviously there's Gunbreaker and Dancer, but what were your like what were your job expectations? What did you want to see put into the game?
I'm unfamiliar with the classes possible in Final Fantasy, so I really had no idea.
Oh, there's so many.
I know. I this is my first Final Fantasy game, so obviously I wouldn't know either, but what about you, Jacob?
I'm not entirely sure. Despite my knowledge on Final Fantasy, approximate knowledge on the franchise, I wasn't sure really what to expect. I always have hopes for what could possibly be there, but I'm not entirely sure of, what the developers wanted to put out there. And now with the release, hey, Gunbreaker, this is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, I know. I'm really happy with Gunbreaker and Dancer, although a lot of people in the beginning were speculating that we were finally going to get a new healer because we just haven't had one since Astro, and a lot of things in the Astrologian quest line. Oh my gosh, the thing had no picture. But a lot of things in the quest line pointed towards Geomancer, which I've never heard of before, but I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I'd like to get introduced to a new healer, especially since that's what I main. But what do you guys think you main in Final Fantasy XIV?
Oh, I've been asked this so many times, but I still have no answer. Obviously, Bard. Bard's gonna be up on my top no matter what, but what else?
I don't know. I mean, you could pick a couple if you want, but I guess I'm looking for, do you main tank, DPS, or healer?
Usually DPS or healer. I don't feel I'm the best tank, but I have potential.
No, yeah, especially with tanking becoming easier later
Yeah,
on.
so I plan to maybe have my warrior going, and then leaning towards Machinist or being the
Machinist.
odd one in our group. I'm sticking with Astro.
Sticking with, oh yeah, Astro has gotten some pretty big changes. We'll talk about those in a little while. But what about you, Jacob? Are you a healer, a tank, or a DPS main?
I'm probably gonna stay a DPS main, but I'm willing to at least hop into tanking, even if it wasn't for Gunbreaker. Just the idea of how streamlined a bunch of the tanking things are, with changes to enemy and all that. It seems very exciting and a bit more accessible than it was before.
Right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I do like the tank changes a lot.
Yeah, it makes you feel less like a daycare runner pulling a bunch of kids along behind as you walk to the library.
Now, I like that perspective, but to me it feels the opposite. I feel like I have to deal with more of the players when I'm a healer than when I'm a tank. When I'm a tank, I just pull whatever and then hope my healer is competent.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but that's because I'm one of those tanks when I tank. As for myself, I'm definitely a healer main. I do almost everything in the game though, so I wouldn't. I'm pretty flexible, I think. I do tanking or DPS or healing wherever it's needed. However, I think I'm gonna shy away from healing more so in the next expansion. I think I'm gonna go either DPS or tank.
This is where I'm like, well, maybe being a healer is gonna get me ahead of the game.
It would, but how much fun would you have being a healer in Shadowbringers?
I guess we'll have to see.
It's really too early to tell, especially since, well, basically the healer changes in Shadowbringers. They're trying to push us towards a more pure healing role. Also, I just realized I'm rogue and I'm not red mage. Yeah, losing a bit of my train of thought on the healers. I don't like being a pure healer unless the fight is going to give me enough of a challenge to force me to keep healing. Because if I've got downtime in between healing and then not being able to DPS for that downtime, it's really kind of sad. Or at least annoying.
Yeah.
What do you think about Gunbreaker?
I love it.
Boy, how sign me up.
Okay, what do you think of Gunbreaker's skills?
I think it's one thing that I have heard, it's essentially a tank with a DPS rotation, and I love that. I adore it. I love the idea of having these cartridges that you use to execute a combo. It seems very good in terms of burst damage. I really like it. It seems really PvP in my Final Fantasy, it's more likely than you think.
Oh yeah. And with
It's too
PvP,
bad that'll be gone for a little while anyway.
yeah, I was just about to say that. Thank you. Yeah, they're removing it, and honestly, I think that's the best decision they've ever made. That's obviously not gonna be permanent. Like, they said they plan on, oh, this isn't even the main story quest. What the hell am I doing? Oh, these are retainers. Oops. I haven't
Healer knows.
I haven't done one of. Oh. Yeah, but they're removing PvP just because a lot of the actions are getting just revised, I think. I hope they turn PvP into something more enjoyable than what it is now.
Oh, there's
Well, this is the first time I've heard about this.
Yeah, Yoshida mentioned it in one of his interviews. I think it was the one with a different YouTuber, Tater Tot. What? His dad thing. Thank you. Sorry, I only remember him by Tate. But yeah,
Ouch.
I thought a lot of the interviews gave pretty good insight into how the development team was thinking. Like, they said they think ahead of the current expansion, which makes sense. But at the same time, the player base only sees it in the current expansion, so they have to go through and they have to play it and see it from the player's perspective to really get an understanding of their classes and how they should go.
Right.
Yeah, because they played StormBlood Monk, and they were like, oh, this is boring. No wonder nobody plays this. Okay, so what about Dancer then? What do you guys think about
Dancer is just gonna be my graceful bard.
Graceful Bard.
Instead of gun bard or music bard, I have grace bard.
Grace Bard. I
Move
don't blame you. What about you, Jacob?
Dancer looks pretty. Very, very excitable.
In terms,
It's like they're taking all the procs from Bard and just putting it over on Dancer. It seems pretty neat, really. Plus that,
yeah, no,
that
go
over
ahead. Sorry.
1,000 potency on that technical step. Boy, that looks fun.
Oh yeah, the damage output looks great for Dancer, but when it comes to procs, it's actually a lot more like Red Mage and how you go from Ver Arrow to a possible Ver Stone. It's a 50% chance to do procs on any of their skills beyond the first step, which I think is an interesting one. I think it'll keep it busy in terms of the fact it's not bad RNG as a 50%, but I don't know, I'll have to play it to see how bad my luck is. I do really like the idea of Dance Partner though, which gives you and your partner benefits through just buffs and as well as that double AoE heal. That's insane. So do you guys think the class lineup would be good for Shadowbringers?
Yeah,
It'll be okay. I still really did want another healer, but you know, I'll take it.
It's just like, I'm not complaining, I'll just take my Dancer then.
My Dancer, my Gunbreaker, that's good. As long as Bard isn't destroyed, I'm happy.
Yeah. Okay, as a DPS main though, what do you think about the changes to the current DPS, Jacob and Shay? I was thinking, wait.
Oh, I don't know. Like, I hope it's not too much change because being DPS is actually pretty interesting. Like, there's a lot of stuff you have to think about, but if it heavily simplifies it, everything will be kind of boring, won't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks.
And yet, on the other hand, with the removal of TP, it could feel a bit more liberating, I suppose, to have all these skills lined up. Because then the idea of managing TP is thrown out the window, and you only have to focus on, okay, what combos into what.
Yeah, with the removal of TP, what happened is a lot of skills just don't have a cost, but some skills now have like a mana cost, and that makes sense. But as for simplification, when I looked through the trailer, I didn't happen to see any simplified anything for DPS. Like, I noticed that Bard's main change was that it doesn't have to worry about crit anymore. It doesn't really need to say, oh, I need to stack this much crit in order to make sure I'm getting all my cool stuff. Now it's just a 40% proc, I think it is, based off of your dots.
But at the same time, we didn't really need that because, like, crit on a Bard is like grass on a field.
And you could still put crit on it, but I see where you're coming from, where it was nice to be able to build up your chances more than just 40%. Like, you could just deck out a Bard with all crit and they would actually have some pretty high crit rates. So crit is still, I think, going to be useful in the fact that you get extra damage, but it's not going to be the same anymore in that you can really boost your chances. Materia melding is going to be changing too. They're going to be changing what kind of stats you can meld to your gear. As a non-healer main, what do you guys think of the healer changes?
That's sad, okay? It's super sad. I had so much fun with Scholar.
Okay, so Shay, you have played Scholar, and so you know to some extent what they're doing to Scholar.
Yes, and I'm very upset. I really like Scholar.
What are you upset most about?
The DPSing.
I lose.
Berries.
Yeah, so for Scholar, we're getting this Ultra Fairy named Seraph, which she'll do even more stuff, which is nice, but they're completely gutting out Bane and our dots and all of that. Yeah, they're, like I said earlier, they're really pushing towards a pure healing role, which I can understand if that's where the game's gonna go, but they're also going to be putting a lot of people in this awkward spot of, oh, I normally DPS during this time. Am I a bad DPS for just or not DPS, but a bad healer for just standing here doing nothing?
This samurai's mean.
Oh no. Are you still
murdering me?
Are you still in PvP?
Yeah.
That would explain a lot. But what about you, Jacob? What do you think of the healer changes? You haven't played healer at all, have you?
Not really dedicated to healing.
Yeah, and that's fine. I was just wondering what's your perspective then, from somebody who hasn't touched healing.
Well, I'm not entirely sure. I think that it's a really good idea that if you're not going to have a new healer, that you need to really sit down and focus very, very heavily on modifying what the current healers can do. I applaud the developers for doing that. Just sitting down and thinking, okay, so how can we rework the healers? How can we make them better at this particular role? It is very sad to see certain skills and DPS potential drop, but I'm not entirely sure. I mean, my heart goes out to healers and their struggles that are bound on the horizon, but yeah, I'm not entirely 100% sure.
Yeah, and that's okay. I don't think, I do like to get the perspective of both non-healers and healers, just so it's like, I like to make sure that all players are aware of each other as a team and how we work together in the games and in the games and in the dungeons and just in the raids. So usually that's what you need. You need to have a certain amount of awareness of what your team needs, and I think they're trying to cut out, like Yoshi said, that he noticed in raids there was a certain meta. They're basically gutting that meta and saying, no, you can play anything that you want and still be able to clear the content. And I think that's a great idea, but I also think that removing characteristics from a class that makes it great and then, I don't know, exemplifying other classes, it doesn't feel right. So we'll just have to see how it goes, and we'll have to see how it falls, like how people fall into place. Like, will they continue to heal with the new changes, or will they switch to DPS like what I'm doing? Or will they continue to heal but only pick a certain class like White Mage, which is getting a lot of new healing skills and is going to be a super bulk healer, and Scholar, which is getting 3 shields that can stack on each other? Or are they going to pick Astro?
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Or are they going to pick Astro, which just only gives damage buffs? But also, it's got its neutral sect. So that's why I'm only going to stick for a little bit longer on the healers. But, Shay, you and I both played Astro. What do you think about the Astro card changes?
It's sad that the cards just became bard songs, but I guess it's okay.
It's damage.
It's damage.
It's damage.
I mean, we're always upset when we don't get that balance when we need it, right?
Not to the extent... Well, I don't feel that all the time. I feel like...
No, but not all the time.
Yeah. I feel for the times that I get just spire after spire after spire after spire, Royal Road, more spire, and then I'm like, oh boy, this is a lot of TP I don't need. But at the same time, we'll be getting rid of TP, which means we wouldn't have Spire anymore to begin with. We'll have MP, which is going to be a lot more useful with Ewer, but we don't need Ewer either. They could have just gutted Ewer and Spire and made them a different card, and we still keep the speed, the crit, the balance or damage, and the defense. I know the defense for me was awesome because it was just an extra buff that you could give to your tanks beyond the shields and what is it, eye for an eye that you can give.
Yeah.
Basically, you can make your tanks super freaking beefy, and I loved it. But we're also getting rid of time dilation. Basically, anything that extends the duration of the cards, we don't have anymore.
Oh.
They took that away too. Yeah.
But I like the AoE.
It was so pretty.
So powerful.
Yeah, no, that's gone too. So with the removal of that, it's definitely going to be a little bit hard to get back into Astro, I think, when you're switching. It's going to be a really rocky road. Changing.
But it'll be kind of cool.
It will be. So what do you think of the new way that the cards are going to be?
It's alright.
Yeah. Being able to get that sun, moon, and star together.
I like the double secting though.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'll accept that part.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you're in a team with another healer, it doesn't really make any sense that you would really even need the neutral sect because they're already taking care of it. But on your own, that thing is amazing. Alright, so we've talked about the DPS changes, we talked about the healer changes. What do you guys think of the tank changes?
Oh boy, tank changes.
I think it'll be fun. Like, I'm excited to tank.
Yeah, which tank do you think looks the most fun out of all four?
Gunbreaker.
Really?
Yeah, it's like Gunbreaker or Warrior.
I think it's funny that both of you are like, Gunbreaker and Warrior, and then freaking Dark Knight poster boys just in the corner all sad like, oh, okay.
Oh, listen, I am all for going for Dark Knight. Honestly, I would rather go for Dark Knight than Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Dark Knight is that edgy child that got his fan fiction come true. I mean, come on, he got his inner darkness to come out and fight with him. I don't know how much more anime that could be. But, yeah, I think...
The only way to make it more anime is that Dark Knights never die.
Yeah. Yeah, which is Living Dead, by the way. That's Living Dead, by the way.
Okay, but they can still die.
They can
still die.
They can still die unless the healer heals them. They're dead but undead. Just constantly. That's like the edgiest thing is that they die but they don't die. Okay, well then how about this? If you could rank the tanks from best changes to not worst changes, but like least interesting changes, who would you put at first, second, third, and fourth place? Like, how would you list it?
Well, last would be Paladin, and then it's Dark Knight, and then it's Warrior, and then it's Gunbreaker, for me.
And you, Jacob?
Best changes would go to Dark Knight. Second best, Paladin, and finally Warrior. Because, A, Dark Knight now doesn't have to spam Dark Arts all the freaking time.
I love Dark Arts though, it's so much fun.
Yeah, I mean... Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty interesting. Shay, you put Paladin at the bottom, why?
Paladin never interested me.
And that's okay. So you put Gunbreaker at the top, why?
Because it's new.
It's new and it's shiny and it's so pretty.
I like big swords.
Don't take that out of context, but
Please don't.
Jacob, you put Dark Knight at the top. Why?
Like I said, less dark arts spam.
Less dark art spamming.
I
And
wonder
then
if that was gone now, he'd be a Dark Knight more often.
Well, that would depend on whether or not I wanted to tank more often.
Good point, good point.
With the changes in 5.0, I am absolutely going to try to tank more. Especially since tank stance only deals an enemy and has no effect whatsoever on the damage you deal.
Finally,
Now we can do sick deeps.
all the DPS.
Oh yeah.
Yes. A little bulkier. I kind of like that.
I like it a lot, and I don't want to rank the tanks because I think I would agree with you, Shay, on Paladin being like the least interesting. It did not get much in the next expansion, which I don't see why it would, because it's not the spotlight for Paladin. Paladin is like the holy righteous class that's full of light and all that stuff, and we're going into already a world filled with light, so I didn't think Paladin was going to get much than what it did.
Yeah.
All about the map.
But I still think that the tank changes benefited it regardless, because Paladin really kind of needed that DPS boost. Even in StormBlood, it was kind of bad. It was just really bad. And was usually more often than not designated the main tank because of how just tanky it is. And that's great. It did its role really well. But now coming into this new expansion, it's gonna be kind of meh unless its damage gets boosted by quite a lot. Especially since it's competing with already good DPSing classes such as Warrior, Dark Knight, and now Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker actually looks pretty good in its attack potency, so unfortunately Paladin's just kind of put at the bottom. But at the top, I think I'd have to put either Dark Knight or Gunbreaker. Gunbreaker's looking amazing, but Dark Knight has gotten some amazing changes too. Warrior did get some changes, but it's like, okay, well, it's already awesome. It doesn't need to be like 10 times more awesome, so we'll just like make it a little more awesome. Especially considering its kind of stance now. It's arguably the best tank of StormBlood. But yeah, we left off in the story of StormBlood at just, what is it, the Alizé? Yeah, Alizé. Alizé got taken to the New World or whatever. However you want to say it. She passed out.
We tried to beat up Xenos, but he won.
Yeah,
That
he
was
won.
The last.
That was the last thing that we saw.
We won, but then he cheated and used Living Dead.
Well, yeah.
So now we have to go to the Crystal Tower to find the beacon from this weird guy.
The bacon.
The bacon. We must find the bacon. Wait, do I really have to do Sunken Temple of Karn?
Ah, yes. Final Fantasy XIV Shadow Bacon.
Shadow bacon. What are you guys excited to find out in the MSQ? Like, what are your speculations? What do you think the beacon is?
A crystal. Probably. That's usually how these games go.
A crystal. I mean, considering in A Realm Reborn everything was about crystals, yeah. It's always crystals.
Always crystal.
It's always Asians, it's always crystals, it's always the Guardians.
It's
always
always
crystal
Asians. It's always Asians. Crystal Asians. Foreshadowing, Shay. Some heavy foreshadowing.
If that gets called out, I will be just pay me money swearing.
You did it. You broke Final Fantasy XIV down to its bare essentials.
Crystal Asian. Oh god.